Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Successful Mentalist podcast, the podcast designed to teach you the tips, the tricks, the methods and the strategies to improve your mentalism performances and grow your entertainment business. My name is Aidan O'Sullivan and today we're going to be discussing character. Now, of course, I'm not doing this on my own. I am joined by my good friend and co-host, Ashley Green.
Hello, how are you doing?
Nice awkward pause there. Yeah, all good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. I'm very excited for this episode because, I think a lot about character. And I really think that the viewers will be able to get a lot from this. And funny enough, before we'd done this episode, I was having a chat with one of our regular listeners and I had a 3-hour conversation on character. But luckily, the listeners won't need to worry. This episode is not going to be 3 hours long. It's going to be a brief summary of all the main points, which I think are good.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those topics that we could like spend an entire month just discussing tiny little elements in every podcast. But I think for the most part, we're just going to summarize and just work from there today.
Yeah.
So without further ado, I've personally, when I was thinking about character and what sort of topics, I think this episode, I'd quite like to just spend a lot of the time asking Ashley questions and finding out a little bit more about him because he's delved into the character a little bit more than I have personally. But what I've kind of looked at is that there are a couple of different approaches to character. But before we go into those, just what is your character? Okay, so I would personally describe that your character is the way you present yourself whilst performing. Is that a fair, very brief summary of that?
Well, yeah, and I think even down to the main point, like we have a character like all the time. Like when you're yourself, that I guess in a sense is a character. There's so many points to consider about that, and I guess I know what you're going to lead into using those points to amplify something. So yeah. Yeah,
definitely. So it's just the way you present yourself, both on stage and off, but for the most part, we're going to be talking about on-stage character, performance character. So I've played around and had a little look at these, and I've kind of summarised this into sort of 2.5 to 3 different types of character. I say 2.5, that'll make sense in a minute. The first approach is the approach that I take, and it's when performing, I am quite simply just an extension of myself, or I'm not consuming a character. I am myself on stage, but just an exaggerated or an extension of that. That's kind of the first sort of approach to character that is out there, I personally feel. But the second is to adopt a creative character. So this can either be sort of broken down into 2 categories, and this is where the 0.5 kind of thingy comes in. You've either got the sort of fictional character in which your stage performance is, or your close-up performance is based on a pre-existing fictional character. So for an example's sake, Colin Cloud takes the sort of role of the real-life Sherlock Holmes. Obviously, Sherlock Holmes being the pre-existing character, Colin's just using his skill set to match that of Sherlock and go from there. That's kind of one element to a fictional or an additional character. The other point that I would argue is that there's also creatively inspired characters. So these are characters that are quite simply created by the performer as a result of things that they are interested in or approaches that they personally would like to take. And this is sort of a lot more where Ashley comes into this. I think Ashley's got a lot of good points on that. But before we sort of delve too deep into sort of Ashley's character, would you mind sharing with the listeners a little bit about how your character came about, sort of that evolution? Because I've seen it over a couple of years, and now it's completely different to when you started. So it'd be great to just hear about that.
Well, I think obviously, like I mentioned, it boils down to understanding you, understanding who you are, and, for the people who listened in the last episodes, understanding what makes you happy, what you want to achieve in life. They're the fundamentals of achieving anything, putting anything together. You first have to understand that before you set up a business, before you set up your character, before you do anything. They're the fundamentals. Secondly, my character came about because of the environment I work in. I perform regularly at a beautiful little venue called Houdini's Magic Bar, and there's a lot of magicians there. And the idea is I want to stand out. And obviously I have a fascination with tarot cards, with psychics. I've always enjoyed watching them when I was younger. And I've kind of merged that together to create something very unique, which does stand out from the other magicians at the bar. So rather than just doing card tricks or just reading your mind for the sake of it, I'm putting a psychic flair on things. But this goes so much deeper than just saying I'm a psychic. I've got an entire backstory about how I read minds. So I always think you should have an answer, because people are interested when they see you do magic, mind reading, hypnosis. They want to learn more about you. So I think it's important to think about, you know, all those questions and kind of preempt what people are going to ask so that you have really good answers for them. So why do you do what you do? How did you get into it? How did you know you could read minds? How do you read minds is a good one. And really focus on every single thing about it. Obviously the other part of that, which is what makes it interesting, and I think with any story, what can't you do? Because that's a fascinating thing. If you're a mind reader or a magician, but you can't do something, like if you can do everything, then it's kind of like, for me it feels a little bit boring. It's like, well, you can do whatever. But when you say you can't do something, people are immediately like, oh, that's interesting, why can't you do that, but you can do this? And it just grabs people, and it makes, I don't know, I think people engage more with that. So for me, I can't do telekinesis, I don't bend spoons. My character can't do it, but my character can look into your future, present and past. And I dabble in hypnosis, and I would say, in short, my character, if you was to imagine like a psychic who can read minds but doesn't know how they read minds, who does card tricks as a hobby, and who also is fascinated with things around that, and that's what led them to studying hypnosis. So this now opens me up to be able to do card tricks, like I can do an ace cutting routine and still keep, you know, my performance intact, because it's not going to detract from what I'm doing, because I'm a psychic that does magic as a hobby, which I'm sure there's plenty of out there at the moment. Does that make sense?
That makes complete sense. Just to jump on a point, for people thinking, why would I limit myself if I want to be the master mentalist or the amazing magician, like the best of the best? Why would I give myself a limitation? And it goes back to that sort of old saying of it's the limitations that inspire creativity. When you give yourself a limitation, you're giving yourself that opportunity to think outside of the box and work with what you've got. And it happens quite a lot when creating tricks and creating routines. You often get a lot of the time that these creators will give themselves a limitation and then try to work around that and try to create this end result using a means that is completely out of the box but has a heavy limitation. I don't know if that kind of helps to summarize that point. So don't be afraid to give yourself these limitations, because they will push you to work harder and to grow and to be able to find your own sort of path in this sort of world of character, if you like.
I don't know why as well, but it's reminded me of something Colin Cloud said. It was completely unconnected to this, but it does have, you know, kind of roots in what we're talking about, and it can be connected to this. But he said, focus on what reviews you want to get from people. Well, like when you're planning a show, focus on the end result and what you want people to think, and you can link that into character. Think of what you want people to go away and remember you by. For me, I want people to go away and remember me as someone who is just this incredible person that knows so much about them, but is also a little bit strange at the same time, because he doesn't quite understand how he's doing it, which then causes a confusion, but then that just makes the experience a little more different. So when you're thinking of that end goal of what you want your experience to take, your audience to take away, that will just, you know, help put it all together.
Definitely. I mean, the audience are the most important part. We can't say it enough. The tricks and that bit doesn't matter. It's the audience, your connection with the audience, that really matters. And it goes back again. It can link into something that Uri Geller said, and that we've put in our 10 tips to improve your mentalism ebook, be someone special, because everybody wants to tell their stories and their experiences and share it with their friends. Like, as people, we want to seem as interesting as we possibly can to our friends and our family, and it's just the way society kind of is nowadays. So if you can be that special something and give them a reason to remember you, because you've really nailed this character and you're a really interesting person, not just as a performer in terms of the tricks that you're doing, but like wholeheartedly as well. If you are just interesting, they're more likely to talk about you, and obviously that's word of mouth, which is only going to be positive for your business, providing it's positive word of mouth. And again, it's just one of those situations where you're just understanding your character. And I would argue that, again, I feel like I'm going to end up saying this a lot on the podcast, but it goes back to episode 3, why mentalism. If you can understand why you're doing mentalism and really go to the absolute bare bones of what is it about mentalism that appeals to you and why does it appeal to you, why is mentalism the perfect fit for you, then you'll be able to use all of this as ammunition when developing and learning your character. Because then you'll know what you're doing, and does this specific character trait or does this approach help? Like that why, and then you can sort of go from there. But actually, I just wanted to sort of put the ball back in your court to just to talk a little bit more. You mentioned that you were working in the Houdini's Magic Bar, and that's kind of where your character sort of came from. Do you think that this is the only sort of way for people to develop their character, by actually going out and performing in either one place or several places, or do you think there are other things?
Well, it certainly helps, because you soon come to grips with understanding what you want, what makes you happy, what puts a smile on your face, what your audience likes, what you feel comfortable with doing. All those things come together with performing. But, at the moment as of recording this, we are in a lockdown period where it is difficult to go out, and the only ways to really perform are online. So although we're doing this, thing on character, saying that is, you can't really go out at the moment. But what I would say is, and firstly, before I say that, obviously, I want to say it's a hard episode for us to record this. We feel it's important to share an episode on character, because, the amount of people that have actually been messaging us, asking about character, how they should perform, is phenomenal. And I think that's one of the most asked questions in mentalism from what I've experienced. How should I perform, or how should I present things? And that boils down to character. And it's not something we can give a definitive answer on, because everyone's unique. Every person's piece of art is different. But it's something that what we're currently doing with this, and what we are saying, is trying to give you points to just provoke thoughts in your mind to, take you down a certain garden path. So in terms of what I think of, performing, of how to develop character, I think, that for me, that was the best route to go down. But there's other routes, and especially at the moment, if you can't get out and perform. What I said to one of the listeners the other day, take a piece of paper and write down, why do you do what you do? What makes you happy? And then from there, write down, what do you enjoy with your mentalism? Do you enjoy the psychology behind it? Do you enjoy predicting the future? Do you enjoy tarot cards, palmistry? Write down everything that you enjoy, and then underneath that, write down what hobbies you have. Then underneath that, write down a little summarisation of how you can all bring this together into one thing, which would essentially be a basis of a character. And then ask yourself questions like, how do you read minds? Why do you read minds? And keep asking those how and why questions until you get like 20 odd things down the line, and then you'll have this amazing story. So for example, in my case, why do I read minds? Because it's fun, and I like to give a nice experience to my audience, because I'm an entertainer. I'm getting booked at events, I'm doing theatre shows, I'm an entertainer, that's what I like. I like, talking with people. If it was another way, I'd, be out doing some weird psychic stuff, but I'm not. I'm doing this for entertainment purposes. And then, again, you can ask, how do you read minds? And for me, it's I don't know. And that probably
Which I
sounds
think
like
is
a
great.
weird question, but for me it really works. My character, I don't know how I read minds. It just happens in the moment. Like, obviously, you guys know that I know how to read minds, but having this, it's almost like a limitation in itself. Like, I don't know how I'm going to read minds. And then I just go up to people and then it just happens and then I act off that. It it gives this really interesting presentation to my audience. So yeah, that's something that I'd honestly recommend if you have free time at the moment. Just grab a piece of paper, write down what makes you happy, what you want to do in mentalism, and then you're going to start from there seeing an idea of a character come out. But yeah, try it. And of course, if this is something that you're interested in, I'm sure me and Aidan can put together like a little ebook or PDF or something on this topic really.
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll work on that. We'll get something together, and we'll put that in the blog post and the show notes for this episode over on our website, thesuccessfulmentalist.com. You'll be able to find it there, as well as a list of all of our other episodes, and go from there. But just before we sort of wrap up and close down this episode, is there any other points? I mean, I appreciate from a listener perspective, we've kind of glossed over what could be, as Ashley mentioned, he had a 3-hour conversation based on character alone, and it's something that we could do. We could quite easily sit and talk for so long, but just to give you sort of the head start, we feel it's good to give you this information early doors so that you can start playing with it now. And then again, when we all come out of lockdown and we're allowed to go out and start seeing people and performing again, you'll already have this baseline understanding, and you'll be able to go and actually act on your character and learn from there. So again, we're trying to give this to you, we're trying to drip feed this to you at the right moment, and if you can really think about this sort of core character now, it's going to pay hugely later down the line. But again, is there any other comments on character that you'd like to sort of wrap up with? I appreciate that it's a very vast topic, so trying to cram it into literally 20 minutes is tough.
Well, I think obviously there's a lot I can speak on, but we're just trying to keep it relevant to obviously the listeners at the moment. To be honest, I think I'll probably put together this 3D PDF and we'll leave it up on the blog post, so you guys can fill that out. But maybe we can, expand on this a little more. And when we do our Facebook Lives over, I think it's usually on Sunday, we've been aiming at somewhere in the day. I guess once you fill these, little sheets out, you can always ask us on there. Drop a question in the comments, and we'll answer it on the Facebook Live and help you out, because character performance is such an individual thing, and it's all down to what you want. And although this episode has kind of been us saying a lot of things without really saying things, is because this episode is more, we can't tell you what to do. You've got to go out and do this. You've got to go out and find who you are. And some of the viewers or some of the listeners that have tuned in have already done that, and they know who they are. And then there's other people which are, just starting out, and they want to create a name for themselves, and they want to find out who they truly are. So, everything we've said here, take it, sit down with a pen and paper, come up with some ideas, and just remember, nothing is wrong. Just write it and see where your own creativity leads you. And you need any help, just drop a comment on our Facebook Lives on any of the Sundays.
Yeah, literally, again, it's one of those situations that this is not easy. Although it might be kind of simple, it's not easy. It will take a lot of thought, and you will be revisiting this time and time again. But I promise you that if you put in the hard work now, you are going to be jet set for honestly incredible performances and pretty much immediate business growth, because you know yourself. And that's more important than anything. So again, as Ashley said, we can't tell you the information, we can only guide you. And again, if you filled out these worksheets and things, drop a comment on the Facebook Lives, head over to our social media and drop us a message, or email us. Email us with any specific questions that you've got. I know over the past couple of weeks we've already had emails from a couple of listeners on a bunch of different topics, which has been amazing to sort of hear about. Our email address is that's the website. It's oh my gosh, it's thesuccessfulmentalist@gmail.com. So if you want to drop us an email, just drop us an email through there. But yeah, this is not easy. We get that. We've kind of stayed vague. We also get that. But please, please, please don't neglect this because you don't think it's important or because it's tough. Really go for this because it'll just be amazing. And
it's something that you're going to work on for the rest of your life, this is. Which sounds weird, but now I'm looking at drawing duplications and I'm looking at how that I can link those more into my character using pendulums and different divination tools, which is great fun. But yeah, let us know what you think of this episode, like always. And unless Aidan's got anything else to say?
No, I think we've pretty much covered everything for now. Obviously, we will be working next week, expanding on this and looking at your online presence, and then you'll be able to use your character from there. But other than that, I think that's everything.
Yeah, we'll see you next week. And obviously, thank you everyone that actually scrolls down and leaves a review on these podcasts. We'll see you soon.